Good morning, members and friends, and welcome to this special Sunday service celebrating our 30th year. We're so pleased to have everyone here with us, both in person and online. I'm Amy Warner. Michael Casey is providing our music today, and Sue Browning, our minister, is here to celebrate this milestone with us. Two brief announcements this morning. One is that we're having lunch afterwards, if you hadn't noticed. And over near the cake, which is back there near the back door, there are also free ballpoint pens. You didn't know you were leaving with a free ballpoint pen today, but take a pen. So that's the end of our announcements this morning. We're going to do the chalice lighting now.
Good morning. It is wonderful. I wish everybody got to stand here on this side. In fact, anytime you want to come up and give a sermon, let me know. But it is just a beautiful sight to see folks here. At some point, I may actually use my camera and take a picture. I'm going to offer some chalice lighting words, and then we will follow it with the words in your order of service as Amy will light the chalice when we're all speaking. At this hour, in small towns and in big cities, in single rooms and ornate sanctuaries, many of our sibling Unitarian Universalist congregations are also lighting a flaming chalice. As we light this chalice today, let us remember that we are part of a great community of faith, a community that added this congregation to its wider community 30 years ago. May this dancing flame inspire us to fill our lives with the Unitarian Universalist ideals of love, justice, and truth. Amy will now light the chalice as we all share in saying our chalice lighting words. We light this chalice as a symbol of the light within all creation. We light this chalice for truth. May the truth be with us always. We light this chalice for love. May the love for others be strong in our hearts. Our opening hymn today is hymn number 360. It is in your gray hymnal. And Michael will give us a little preamble, and then we will join in after he plays it through once. Please rise in body or spirit.
I've chosen, oops, sorry. For opening words this morning, I've chosen number 733, which is in the gray hymnal, to open worship. You can follow along or just listen. It was written for building dedications, but I think it's appropriate for today. So I'm just going to read it to you. It's called A Place of Meeting. Out of wood and stone, out of dreams and sacrifice, the people build a home. Out of the work of their hands and hearts and minds, the people fashion a symbol and a reality. May this house be truly a place of meeting, meeting one with another in warmth and joy and openness, meeting one with another in courage and love and trust. May all who enter here trust one another so surely that they dare to share the deep fires that burst into anger, as much as the sweet spring waters that swell into laughter, the slow erosion of wounded tears, as much as the soaring song. May these walls know silence as 100 hearts search inward, each for its own small spark of hope that might otherwise be snuffed out in the noise. May these rafters hear the voice of the child as surely as that of the orator, and the sound of the lute, the clack of the typewriter, the swish of the broom, and know that all are as holy as the shout of a million stars. May the rain fall lightly on this house, the sun shine warmly, the winds blow softly, and bless it as a place of joy and peace.
I think the reading reminds us how blessed we are to have people who imagined the congregation 30 years ago, but then put in place the building. How many folks here have seen the pictures of the building? Are you looking at me? Am I okay?
Yeah.
We didn't skip something? Okay.
No.
I was like,
Sorry, I won't get you.
I was like, that moment of, what did we screw up? But how many folks here have seen the pictures when they brought this prefab building in here and the cranes were coming down? Look around and realize how many people did not see that. This place was built for all of us, and we draw as we come together, as I open a time for reflection, a time for consideration of all that is in our lives, the many ways that religions and traditions came together and have formed and reformed over 30 years. We draw from the world's religions today. Our words of prayer today are from Judaism. We do so knowing that this is the week of the High Holy Days. Rosh Hashanah, the new year, began last Sunday. Yom Kippur will follow this week. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur invite participants to repentance and renewal while celebrating the possibility of new relationship to one's understanding of the holy. These words are by Leah O'Geary. This is a season of repair, a time to reflect on how we might endure when life tears at us. We are held by the great book of life, in which it is written that we will inevitably face deprivation and discomfort, longing and forgiveness. Each among us must contemplate our own place in it all. As those here who were in relationship to Judaism mark the High Holy Days, our hearts fill with hope and fear, turning and settling. mystery and agency, accountability and acceptance. Let us gather today in celebration of our shared humanity and our personal power. We come together in this season of renewal and turning, grateful for this place, grateful for this time together. We invite, now someone is doing acknowledgements of the heart.
Yes, acknowledgements of the heart will be led by Kevin Bryan today.
Good morning on this day of celebration. This is a time in our service that has been set aside to share joys and concerns. So if any of you would like to share a joy and or a concern, please come forward and give us your message. And I think Amy will light the candles.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure all share their concerns for our fellow members of this world in Florida and what they are going through. And we did get a message this just a couple days ago that the UUA's Disaster Relief Fund is putting together a response to help not only the people of Florida in that area that was hardest hit, which includes a UU congregation in Fort Myers and also in Sarasota. So look for information in your reflections and on the back bulletin board as we kind of form ideas about how we can help. But prayers and heartfelt wishes to all of those people who are going through what they are going through now and what they're still to go through.
I'm happy and sad to report that Joan Bloom has moved into the resorts at Chester River Manor. That happened on Tuesday. And I'd like to thank Joy and Vita and many others who have helped her through the years as she has aged.
Have to do something about that plug. The last 2 weeks I've been talking about Marcy's sister who they thought had a stroke. Well, it turns out she really didn't have a stroke. And after a couple of weeks of being delirious and totally kind of out of control, Marcy went in to visit her one morning and she looked up and said, "Hi, Marcy, how you doing?" So she's kind of, she still has some issues, but she's back to her old self, and they think it was a bladder infection of all things. So, so she's doing well.
Following up on what Lynn was saying, we need to step back and consider people's place in this universe. No matter how high and mighty we consider ourselves, ultimate Mother Nature is in charge, and she could still come at us in full force.
This is just I just can't believe this day. I mean, from this celebration of 30 years pamphlet on the work of John and Jane and the entire PROC committee, and so many more. The more I look around and see what's out there and see the acts of love that have brought this day to fruition, I'm overwhelmed. So, just this is UUCR, and for that, I am so grateful.
Any further joys or concerns?
Hi, I'm Mark, and my joy is joining the church, first of all, a couple months back. And it's led me to accept people that aren't quite as friendly or outgoing as I think they should be. And I've learned to accept that through this church. And I also want to thank the people that have brought me reflections. I don't have a computer, so I can't, pull it up on the computer. And they bring me one every Wednesday, and I'm so grateful for everybody that's involved in doing that. So thank you. And if it wasn't for the church, I had to bite my tongue several times at people this week. So it was the church that made me stop and think, So I'm grateful for the church. Thank you.
Anyone else who wants to come up?
I can't give up a chance to embarrass my wife. And being the organization's longest resistor, which will continue, by the way. I was happy to see the place mainly for my children, because my stance on religion is different than a lot of people, and I needed something to give them an unbiased base. And it did that. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else who would like to share? Well, if not, we may take a few seconds to kind of hold in our hearts the joys and concerns that are shared and those that are unspoken. All bless and may we walk in peace and be mindful of the needs for others.
All right, we're gonna have our outreach. Slided in. There we go. Okay, thank you. Okay, so our outreach collection is for Rebuilding Together Kent County, and we have Pam Vogel here today to talk to us about the organization. Thank you, Pam.
Hi, folks. It's been a little while since I've been here, so thank you so much for inviting me back. I know you guys have supported Rebuilding Together several times over the years, and from what I understand, you've also done food donations as well when many years ago. So Rebuilding Together is very near and dear to my heart. I've been on the board for over 4 years. Right now, I'm the secretary as well as the chair of the volunteer committee. And it's funny, when I first was interested in the board, to me, it was one way of meeting people since I just moved in a few years before. But I had no intention of being on the board. I just wanted to get out there with a hammer and do my thing. But it's been wonderful to be on the board and to meet people and to work towards the common goal. We have a very simple but far-reaching mission statement, which is 6 words: repairing homes, revitalizing communities, and rebuilding lives. But what this means functionally is we help our homeowners in Kent County with critical home repairs to help keep them warm, safe, and dry. We and all at no cost to the homeowners. And here in Kent County, it started in 2004 after Hurricane Isabel flooded Rock Hall and surrounding areas. And there was a core group of volunteers who took it upon themselves to start helping their neighbors. And then they joined the National Rebuilding Together office that's now in DC. And at that time, they worked at all volunteer jobs. So fast forward to today, this year alone, we have made 47 critical repairs at 24 different properties, touching 48 people's lives. And we have about another dozen projects on the docket for this year. So we're pretty busy. Many of our residents are older and many are disabled. But we also have some of what everybody calls the working poor, some of the younger people who are out there full time, and some with children at home. So it's a broad reach we have. But they all have one thing in common: they're homeowners, but for whatever reason, they cannot afford or have the wherewithal, or friends who can help, or brothers or sisters who can pitch in to make the repairs on their homes. And the types of jobs are endless. We have, holes in roofs where I literally have gone into people's homes and I can see the light, not good when you're trying to keep out the rain. We've either repaired or built from scratch ramps to keep people with our, with our disabled people being able to enter and exit safely. We've had non-functional plumbing. We've had a family who used a porta pot for several months before we got to them. We've also had people without access to water going to local places and just using the outside spigots to get their water for their homes. Let's see. Another interesting repair was where a house was having a lot of water come in underneath the crawl space and created a lot of the black mold that was really damaging to their health. So we were able to hire somebody to regrade the area. And then we worked with Shore Rivers to plant natural natives to help suck up all the rest of the water. And we have, since COVID kind of shut down a lot of the volunteer work. So we had to hire contractors. And now we're doing if we can do the work with volunteers, like the more basic repairs, we do that. But we have the funding for some of the bigger jobs, the roofs and the more dangerous jobs that we contract out. And we obtain a significant amount of our funding through federal grants and also local grants, United Way, and different foundations, but quite a bit from individual donors. So I could talk to you for a long time about this organization, and I won't, but I just appreciate all all of what you've been able to give us in the past. And we're always looking for people to help out, whether you can wield a hammer or bake the cookies for the volunteers or serve on a committee. That's always, we always look for that. But financial support is also greatly appreciated. And there are many other organizations in the county who help with similar, trying to keep people in their homes. And I know one is the Ken Attainable Housing, and we're not partnered with them, but we have decent communication and hope to somehow build that bridge a little bit stronger. And I think David is on that committee, or there's somebody here in the church who's very active in that group. But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Pam. Okay, since it's been a while since we passed the basket, I just want a brief reminder. If you're putting your pledge in today, make sure you write pledge on your check. Everything else that goes in the basket today will be given toward rebuilding together. And then also, if you're not prepared to give today, you can also go on the website and go to the donate button, because we've generally been keeping the donation period open for about 3 or 4 weeks, let's say till the end of the month. And then we'll tell you how much we were able to gather for rebuilding together. Thank you.
And for our offertory today, I asked Michael to play a hymn. We're going to work through our offertory. You're going to have to sing. That will get you a sermon. But eventually it gets to you to food, so it's all good. But in learning about world religions and drawing from many sources, I invite us for the offertory to stay seated and sing 1031, Filled with Loving Kindness.
It's
in this hymnal. Michael will play it through once, and then you'll see that it says, may I be filled, may you be filled, and may we be filled. So I invite us into a spirit of reflection for our offertory as well. as we sing that and watch and look at those candles, it is just beautiful. We're reading today by Mike Watson on religious tolerance. Mahatma Gandhi was a man of strong convictions and a Hindu. His philosophy of renunciation and nonviolence was inspired by his reading of the Christian scriptures alongside the Bhagavad Gita. He was especially drawn to the Sermon on the Mount, which is a summary of Jesus's teachings. In this sermon, Jesus tells his followers to remove the metaphorical plank from their own eyes before helping their neighbors with the speck in theirs. That is, we must remember that our own failings not only exceed the faults we may find in others, but may also hinder our ability to see them graciously. Not one of us is perfect, and therefore we can all always grow. We need others to help us with the growth because of our own blind spots. We all have a primary responsibility to our own selves, and yet even in this, we occasionally find ourselves powerless to change. If we believe that our future rests on our ability to live together in peace, then our first responsibility is to look within ourselves at what stands in the way of that. And then, with the support of others, we make the choice to grow. This is the more difficult work, which is why it is often overlooked or ignored. A lot to consider there about what it is that helps us into that growth. I often think about those bumper stickers. How many folks see a bumper sticker and it just sort of makes you feel good? It's got the Star of David and the crescent moon, and often it's framed in the words coexist. You always wonder, maybe it's a Unitarian Universalist driving the car. There are probably too many religions to count. Religions, and they vary so greatly. Yet virtually all of them have something akin to the golden rule in their scriptures. In the Gospel of Matthew in Christianity, there's something along these lines. In everything, do to others as you would have them do to you, for this is the law and the prophets in the gospel. We can go through them all. We're only going to go through one other one, but in Islam, it says, not one of you truly believes until you wish for others what you wish for yourselves. It's from the Prophet Muhammad. There are similar phrases in so many scriptures, and religions both differ and are the same. When I think of the richness of religion, what about the words of Francis Assisi, who's a 13th century monk in Italy? Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is sadness, joy. Where there is darkness, light. What about the words from Micah 6:8 in the Hebrew scriptures? What does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God? This call to do justice, to love kindness, and all these different messages come forward. We had our Jewish prayer earlier, honoring the season of repentance and renewal and our offertory. That chance to think about what it is when we are each kind and we each move toward peace. There's so many religious messages and images which have served as inspiration to humanity for centuries. Yet, almost always, when a discussion on religion in general happens, we've got a lot of folks that want to show exactly how smart they are, and what I often hear is about the harm done in the name of religion. Buddhists killing the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. The Taliban implementing and taking freedom from women under some version of Islam that does not make sense to almost every other Muslim. Evangelical Christian leaders who demonize the LGBT community. And more, We have evidence more and more of indigenous people that were stripped of their culture and faith by Christian leaders, including Unitarians. One recent study showed that about 50% of people think that religion does more harm than good. And that is absolutely a door-closing statistics. And it's easy to write off all the good things that we brought forward based on these examples of abused power, extreme fundamentalist actions, and blatant violence. Don't get me wrong, we need to name bad behavior and directions. We all need to learn how to tell hard histories, many of them tied to many of our ancestors, from the Crusades to the Inquisition, wars fought in the name of religion. We need to have our eyes open. But I'll also offer this. It's way easier to be a critic in life, to know a few facts, to generalize, to label, and then dismiss one or more religious traditions, and then to stereotype all of its followers. And Unitarians and everybody else, we get stereotyped too. So my message today is one of caution and one of invitation. I think on the cautious part, I want to spend a little bit of time there. I think we do need to be cautious, and I'll say even we need to be humble rather than all-knowing as we consider the value of religion. It's too easy to just write it all off with few examples. But the numbers alone make us need to think deeply. Roughly, there are 8 billion people in the world. About 2 billion are Christian of so many varieties. 2 billion are Muslims, also of many varieties. About 1 billion folks are Hindu, 500 million Buddhists, and there are so many native traditions and different spiritual practices. Some religions come with a deity, some without. But religious traditions for communities are held dear to those who practice. I just want to go through and think about sometimes the flavors of a religion, and Christianity is the one I know the best. It is practiced in so many different ways. About a half of the Christians in the world are Roman Catholic. And that comes from the nuns on the bus. I have a hero in Sister Simone Campbell, recently won, I think it was the presidential medal. She is relentless in standing up for the poor, standing up for immigrant communities. And she always says, you walk toward trouble, a message not very much like John Lewis's message. She is at one end. You've got some narrowly focused bishops, not all of their followers, but you've got some Roman Catholic bishops, particularly in the US, that are a little narrow. That's my polite version. And then we've got a pope who seems to tick off that subset of bishops every time. It is a faith of a lot of depth. Imagine being at the First Communion at a small church in Mexico, a child first or second grade, experiencing the family's pride and joy, a sense of belonging, of coming into that community. I think too of candles that are at the back of a sanctuary in many faith traditions, particularly in the Roman Catholic tradition, that not unlike our own joys and sorrows, bring people together. I know I have more than once claimed that my favorite show in the world is called The Midwife. And I'm always touched by their Anglican, their Episcopalian sisters, and that group of less than a dozen sisters after a hard day who come together in prayer, chanting. Maybe if you think of your curiosity about faith traditions, maybe it takes you to question a Black friend in Chestertown who attends maybe an AME congregation. I've had a little bit of exposure there. How are they touched each week by the lesson? How do they understand the Christian messages of liberation and the consistent vote they're getting from God to hang in there? How do they tell the story of the Black Church of the United States and slavery and the church as being a place where civil rights leaders could gather? I want to go even further. What do you think of peace grounded? And what do you think the experience might be of a Mennonite or an Amish tradition? What is it about the simple structures there? Their Quaker friends. Such breadth, and that's just a small slice of Christianity. I wonder about the life of a Muslim on an island in Indonesia, or the life of someone practicing Islam in the urban US. So the caution here is that we don't generalize any faith or assume we see one headline and we know all about a faith tradition. The invitation is to approach all these many people with curiosity, because religion is a broad term. Religion and the traditions tell us how we hold the emotions of being human, find a path to meaning in community, and different folks do it in different ways, but the risk is that we write it off. Religion and spiritual practices over time came because people struggled with the reality that we are all going to die at some point. It's pretty much that simple. And the species who weren't conscious in that evolutionary channel did not have this struggle that we do. Religions emerged as people longed for control and hoped to limit risks, and mostly because they want to deal with the anxiety. And we do that through scripture, through stories, through the reminders that others have also dealt with problems. And we know so much more than what most of these religions were formed and framed, most of them through oral traditions. We know more about science. We can explain more, but does that really change our sorrows, our need to cope, the need to express lament and to joy? What is it that gives word to peace and justice? The risks are different. We have more knowledge, but I sense that our vulnerability is pretty much the same. Individuals want a sense of belonging, and communities value cohesion. And with cohesion comes the bad stuff. Comes with conflict and power that gets abused in the name of religion and gets mixed up in nation states in all sorts of ways. It gets mixed up when leaders lose touch with their followers, when they deny the agency of a follower. So the downside of being a part of a group is real, but can we name what religion does that is good, that is a needed good? Can we pull up the positive examples as quickly as we can quickly list off all the bad that's done? Places where religions have pooled efforts for charities. Places that give voice to the poor. Religious groups that tackle homelessness and hunger, particularly when the government is not doing so. Religious practices, almost all of the traditions in tennis, remind people of inclusion and fairness. Religious groups advocate for people with disabilities, for youth in prison. The Poor People's Campaign, led by William Barber, is a current example. It's modeled after what Martin Luther King had done, which says we need to give voice, not just religious communities partnering, but broader communities, to continually remember those on the margin. Some find that religion is just evil enough that we should write it off. In his book that was written over 10 years ago, Christopher Hitchens wrote the book, God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything. And he advocates for a 100% secular society. In essence, he finds that science and reason made the old needs for religion and faith are gone. He sees that it does more harm and it will ideally fade away. But I think about it. Religion, needed by whom, will fade away. Those the most likely to dismiss religion are those with the most security in this world. They have confidence in going it alone and less need for another, less reason to invest in spiritual community. So I ask, do we, collectively, individually, do we value religion? not just the UU religion as practiced right here in Chester River, cake and all, but do we value and respect the many ways that religion grounds a society? I think it feels really important to ask that question. A couple reasons. I got three. First, if you go to the back of your hymnal, we don't all need to do it right now, you'll see the sources we draw from as a faith community. There's the principles to value the inherent worth and dignity and interconnection, but we draw from many sources. And one of the sources we explicitly list is that we draw wisdom from the world's religions, which inspire our ethical and spiritual life. How do we live that out as a community? Is there something when we pull together our services in the practice of the Buddhist tradition or the Hindu faith or Christian traditions that help us strengthen who we are as Unitarian Universalists? How does the breadth of our Jewish and Christian teachings enrich our lives? And what was noted earlier, what is it we teach our children about the values, the readings, the rituals and celebrations of world religions? How do we expose them to the broader truth? I heard earlier, somebody said unbiased, to not be afraid to give our kids information about the harm, but also why it is that for 30 years, people have bothered to create a faith community. So that's my first thought. My second thought is we as Unitarian Universalists continually talk, at least I do all the time, I know you're going to say this, about drawing the circle wide. If we think that community, beloved community comes when we've drawn a circle so wide, no one is outside of that community. No one. That's not to say people don't need to be accountable for behaviors. There are bad behaviors and you need to hold people accountable for bad behaviors. But do we sometimes think of that circle, but then we write off somebody because we don't understand the way they practice their faith? We don't understand a Pentecostal tradition or something else, not because of some harm it's done, but because we don't understand. I think if we're not careful, we get in the way of drawing a circle wide by writing off others as not worthy of being in that circle. Looking at our religious biases is a place to consider that well. It's so much easier to be a critic than it is to build the connections, to create and sustain relationships across difference. And it has to start with an appreciation of what we might learn. And I also wonder if you've built those connections, not because everything is perfectly aligned, but might that be a counterbalance to other power? If you can find places of connection, maybe not understanding everybody's faith, but looking at the core values, might that be a place to give voice against the tough parts of religion? I think that is the third point. In our reading, we hear that Gandhi asked his followers to first look within and then clear-eyed to extend grace to others. He knew he needed to build across a difference, and he drew from many sources. So we start with tolerance. It may build us to something broader than tolerance and interfaith connections. Because I think as we start with curiosity, we can learn. How do we search through appreciative inquiry for the best in people and their organization and their possibilities? And I do come to this with the bias of a minister and a congregational leader, because I see promise in religion. Not just my religion, but the depths of so many ways people live their lives with integrity, marking milestones, renewing energy, and asking the big questions. So my message of caution is to worry about those big sweeping labels. If you think you've known something and you write off a group of people, red flag, be aware. The invitation to approach difference with curiosity rather than judgment. And my message of hope is found in the way communities find to live into deeply held values of compassion. The many ways that we imagine the golden rule or something close. A Unitarian back in the 16th century. It was back in Transylvania. His name was Francis David. He was a religious leader. And he is famously quoted as saying, "We don't need to think alike to love alike." As we finish the celebration of this 30-year tradition here, we're going to sing a final hymn in a moment. And then we will hear the story of this religious congregation's history as our little elves work on the potluck in the back. I ask us to reflect, not just today, but this week, this year, on his words. We don't need to think alike to love alike. For gratitude for this congregation, may it be so, and blessed be. Our final hymn today is hymn number 1008. And after you sing that, you're just going to sit back down, and then you'll hear the history that we have prepared. So please rise in body or spirit for hymn number 1008. Please be seated.
Okay.
Boom. Right at
Okay.
11. Good
Yay.
job.
Okay. I'm going to call up the readers. Clark's here already. Vita, and come up, and we'll be Ren, Diane, and Jackie. So yours is right here. Good morning. You just step up when it's your turn. Okay. Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, all coming together to talk about our 30th anniversary. In December 1991, one phone call set the wheels in motion for the building of a liberal religious community in conservative Kent County, Maryland. One Protestant mom, Pat Bjorky, and one Jewish mom, Leslie Roach, who is now living in Colorado, came together in their quest to find a faith of honesty and authenticity they could believe in and pass on to their children. Both had been reading about Unitarian Universalisms, but found that there was none on the Upper Eastern Shore. Their search led them to the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Easton, where Reverend Daniel Higgins, thank you, Dan, put them in touch with Kent County residents Steve and Mariana Hitchner and Dr. Peter Tapke. The 5 founding members then worked to lay the foundations for a liberal religious fellowship. The first worship service of the Unitarian Fellowship of the Chester River was held at 4 p.m. on Sunday, September 27th, 1992. That was pretty fast work in just a year. In the Quaker Meeting House, it included a robust children's religious education program and a monthly potluck dinner. In June 1993, the Unitarian Universalist Association approved our application as a member congregation. Founding member Dr. Peter Tapke served as the fellowship's first president. Reverend Paula Anoni Mariano served her ministerial internship with us in 1994 to 96, after we moved Sunday worship services to the Casey Academic Center at Washington College. Paula provided organizational and pastoral guidance and gave a feeling of permanence to our fledgling congregation.
That was very lively. I'll try to be lively too. Reverend Alex Richardson arrived in January 1998, and although he was with us less than 2 years, he kept our growing congregation on its toes to address issues of social, racial, and LGBTQ justice in the local community. Reverend Dan Higgins formalized his ministry with UUCR in September 1999. Dan helped us develop professionalism and intentionality among the board and membership. With the congregation now growing at a rapid rate, Reverend Matthew McNaught was called in August of 2002 as a half-time minister. We moved back to the Quaker Meeting House to help accommodate the children's RE program, which had outgrown the space at the college. The constant shuffle from place to place intensified our desire for a home of our own. After an extensive building search, the property at 914 Gateway Drive was purchased in the Crestview community. In May 2005, Reverend Greg Shute joined us and provided not only ministerial services, but guidance and support throughout the building process. In October, the land was blessed in a ceremony conducted by Chief Winterhawk Fitzhugh of the Nassau Wawash tribe, and we then proceeded with construction of this building. Thanks to founding member Peter Tapke's generosity and a successful 3-year capital campaign, the building was constructed entirely without incurring a mortgage and was completed in just 1 year.
Trying to keep up with the liveliness here if I can. Upon Reverend Schute's retirement, the church hired Dr. David Newell in 2011 as a part-time minister. The congregation increased its focus on justice, becoming certified as a UUA Green Sanctuary and a welcoming congregation. We sponsored the establishment of the first PFLAG, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays chapter on the Eastern Shore, and also created an animal ministry to promote the humane and ethical treatment of all animals. In April 2015, UUCR was awarded a 3-year, $20,000 Chalice Lighters grant from the UUA's Joseph Priestley District, which gave support and guidance for congregational growth. After a lengthy search for a quarter-time minister, Reverend Christian Schmidt began his ministry with us and lent a youthful presence. However, he and his wife, Kristen, left just a year later to accept a joint ministry position in Berkeley, California. Once again, we began the search for a new minister. In July 2017, we were fortunate to enter into a contract with Reverend Sue Browning. Since she also serves as the minister of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Easton, opportunities for collaboration and connection between the two congregations have been created over the past 5+ years of her ministry with us. In 2018, UUCR adopted a strategic plan that returned to a focus on addressing local racism and racial equity. Members of the congregation attended Undoing Racism trainings held in Kent County and helped promote the community social action committee for racial justice. Building bridges became a theme of our partnerships with other organizations, and UUCR has now developed a presence and reputation as a justice-seeking faith community.
In March 2020, the coronavirus pandemic impacted the world in ways that no one could have predicted. Amidst the upheavals and uncertainty of this unprecedented time, UUCR endeavored to be a source of stability and support to its members and friends. At the end of March, after much collaboration between UUCR's and UUFE's ad hoc tech teams, the first online Sunday service was presented on YouTube. The pastoral care associates reached out to everyone to find out how they were coping. Religious education also switched to a virtual format for the remainder of that year. In June 2021, the church made significant financial donations to 2 community organizations striving to address racial and economic inequities in our community. Both Menary's Dream Alliance and Kent Attainable Housing received $5,000 grants to support their programs, reinforcing our commitment, in spite of the COVID pandemic, to the positive growth and the elimination of racial and economic barriers in our community. On September 12th, 2021, UUCR returned to in-person worship services with many safeguards in place and continues a hybrid of in-person and virtual worship. Today, the Unitarian Universalists of the Chester River celebrates 30 years of its existence through faith in its principles, inclusion of all people, and dedication to our beloved community.
UUCR has had precious new babies born, beloved elderly members have passed away, and we have suffered the dramatic loss of young adults who took their own lives. We celebrated marriages, mourned separations and divorces, proudly acknowledged the coming of age of teens we have loved and cared for since infancy. We've laughed, we've squabbled, we've danced, we've sung. Our history is recorded not just in dates and events, but in our relationships to one another. Like our namesake, the Chester River, the ebb and flow of time changes us, both as individuals and as a body. We gather together to celebrate all that is our life. Thank you.
We have so much paper.
We have a lot of paper here. Wait, I think that's, oops. Okay,
News and voice everyone.
okay, all righty.
That was amazing. And I want to offer gratitude to the people who take the time to put histories together. It matters to know those roots and to know the wings that we talked about last week. So Amy, before I offer closing words and extinguishing the chalice, is there anything else we had planned to do at this moment? She's telling me no, so we're good. So in a moment, you are welcome to enjoy the lovely potluck. I hope in addition to just normal conversation, you tell some stories from our newest folks that are here to the folks who goes back the furthest in the congregation. Diane? Bjorky. Okay, who else has been here before 19? Amy, who has been here in the 1990s? Who arrived in the 1990s? Good, you're not there? Who came before 2010? Before 2010? Sometime, anytime before 2010. Okay. How many folks have come here since 2010? Look around and understand changes. And Helen, I see a hand up.
I just want to mention Diane's on the Zoom and she's been here since the 90s, I believe she said.
Was
since
that
the
Diane Turpin?
1990s.
Hi, Diane. Everybody turn around. Wave to Diane. And I saw Linda Dutton was online. Who else do we have online today?
That's it
Those
today.
two. That's lovely. And Helen, who has now been doing tech for 2 weeks. You are one of our newest folks here. So before, I just want to offer a chance of celebration. Does anyone just sort of like want to offer a round of applause for this congregation and for all these leaders who have kept it going? So thank you.
Sue, who is here now for how many years?
I am here for just over 5 years and am excited every time I walk in the door. Part of that is because if I'm walking in the door on Sunday, it means the sermon's already written. So in fairness to all that is, I would invite this whole group to extinguish the chalice together. I will offer closing words. Maybe all of you can go stand over there because it would look cool. Vita, for how many times?
May I say one thing?
David Beeler is going to have a camera out, I'm sure.
May I say one thing? I think
Sure.
we ought to acknowledge our administrator in the office, Darlene Wiggins.
Yes.
I think she can go to those.
So I am going to offer some closing words. We will then say the shared words of extinguishing our chalice and testing Michael Casey now on his first few weeks there. We will slide directly into the go lift it up words. So as we finish extinguishing the chalice, we will all start singing go lift it up. Closing words for today. Our different paths come together in this holy place, graced by the history of our free religious heritage. Let us be mindful of the forces deep within which call us to become more than what we are. May this time together bring rest, renewal, comfort, and challenge. And may we always be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but we are connected in the mystery, in the wonder, to each other, to this community, and to the universe. I invite us now to say our words as Diane has that, and Vita will clear the chalice so everybody can see. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.
play everything through once. So respect.
Go in peace, go in love. Thank you.